The Shaman in Cataclysm is one of those classes that you just can't help but to fall in love with while you're playing it. Elemental feels familiar, but has so many changes to help you keep pumping, and just changes some of the more irritating things from being Elemental in Wrath of the Lich King. Enhancement is the same super fast-paced spec that we've become accustomed to, but with some changes that just make the cleave potential absolutely bonkers. And then Resto has several different healing styles that you can adopt, depending on whether you want to put focus on the tank, focus on the raid, or even try and do a little bit of DPS, whilst also putting some healing out. I can honestly say, if you've been playing a Shaman during Wrath, or you're just not sure whether it's the class for you in Cataclysm, you're going to enjoy this one. And I didn't do it alone. Jay, what are you saying?
Hey guys, my name is Midjay. I'm a long-time Shaman player with experience from vanilla all the way through to retail and current classic, and I've worked with Scott to come up with the top 10 Shaman changes list in Cataclysm to share with you all.
So let's find out if it's the class for you with mine and Midjay's top 10 changes in Cataclysm for the Shaman. Coming in at number 1 has to be Spirit Walker's Grace. Now this is useful for all specs, but of course it's going to have a lot more use for both Elemental and Resto. What it does is calls upon spiritual guidance permitting movement while casting non-instant Shaman spells. This spell may be cast while casting other spells, and it lasts 15 seconds. The fact that you can cast it while casting other spells is far bigger than it may seem, because as we know, mechanics in the raids in Cataclysm are going to be far more difficult than what we're used to. So if you've got a void zone underneath you or fire coming towards you and you're halfway through casting a healing rain, you'll be able to pop Spirit Walker's Grace without cancelling the cast and instantly start moving. What this also allows you to do as Elemental is pretty much be able to cast your entire rotation on the move. And it's only a 2-minute cooldown, which is absolutely crazy. 15 seconds of movement being able to do your full healing or DPS rotation as Elemental. And there's something else that makes Elemental even more overpowered when it comes to movement, which would bring us nicely onto number 2, which is Glyph of Unleashed Lightning. Now, if you watch my top 10 mage video, you'll know I was really excited to talk about the fact that mages can cast Scorch while moving. This is better. This is your primary filler ability, and you can cast it while moving at all times while you've got this glyph on. This makes raiding as an Elemental Shaman feel so good in raids. Got something bad on the floor that's just popped out underneath you? Just make sure you're casting Lightning Bolt while you're moving out of it. Something's about to come in that requires you to stack on your party or stack on your raid, no problem. Just keep casting Lightning Bolt while you're moving. It's exactly the same as Scorch with Mage, where basically the ABCs of playing a caster DPS is always be casting. The fact that you can physically always be casting is bonkers. And this does actually tie in really nicely with another point that I'm going to get to soon. Now, just for clarity, in case you think that this actually replaces your Glyph of Lightning Bolt that you use at the moment in Wrath of the Lich King, it absolutely doesn't. So you can actually use Glyph of Unleashed Lightning to allow Lightning Bolt to be cast while moving, and Glyph of Lightning Bolt at the same time, which increases damage done by 4%. Now, whilst there are some other glyphs that are actually stronger than this, Glyph of Unleashed Lightning is one that I would never want to raid without. Obviously, unless you know it's a complete standstill fight and you're never going to need to use it, in which case, okay, you'll probably raid without it. Coming in at number 3 is a brand new ability, and it's called Unleash Elements. And now Unleash Elements has some really interesting effects. Some of these effects change your rotation completely, such as an Elemental Shaman's. Some are more just bind it into another ability and forget about it, and others have mechanics attached to it that you just wouldn't expect. So what it does is it's got a 15-second cooldown and a 40-yard range, and it focuses the elemental force imbued in the Shaman's weaponry with the concentrated effects depending on the enchantment unleashed. So if you was to use this whilst you're using Wind Fury weapon, it'll unleash the enchantment, dealing 175% weapon damage to the target enemy, and increases the Shaman's melee attack speed for the next 6 swings, or until 12 seconds have elapsed. I think you can see why that would be good for enhancement. If you use it with Rockbiter weapon, you've actually got a taunt, and now the interesting thing with this is how mobile you can be. Shamans are such a strong kiter, with being able to use Frost Shock, for example, Earthbinding Totem, and using Ghost Wolf. So actually having a taunt to be able to pull things away and kite is really overlooked. On a Rockbiter weapon, it simply unleashes it, forcing the target enemy to attack you for 5 seconds. Let's not forget, this is a 40-yard range taunt. I think we'll see some pretty crazy strats done in certain fights with this, trust me. If you unleash it with Frostbrand weapon, it's going to do some frost damage, and it's going to reduce the movement speed by the target by 50% for 5 seconds. It's increased in effectiveness if the target is already afflicted by a movement reducing frost effect. So when you unleash elements with Frostbrand weapon on, and let's say you've already frost shocked, or you've hit them with Frostbrand weapon which slows them as well, it's actually going to increase that slow from 50% to 70%. So a 70% slow. Obviously, going to be really strong in PvP. With Flame Tongue weapon, which, let's face it, primarily you're going to be using this as elemental, it deals 2.8k fire damage to an enemy target and increases the damage dealt by the Shaman's next fire spell by 30%. So being able to buff a big lava burst, or how you're probably going to find it being used more, is using this to get a 30% buffed Flame Shock up, is absolutely awesome. If you use it with Earth Living weapon, it's going to heal a friendly target and increase the effect of the Shaman's next direct heal by 30%. Now, you can get some seriously big single target heals out with this because you've got so many different multipliers when it comes to being a Resto Shaman, from talents and from healing on Earth Shield and all of that jazz. So an extra 30%. I mean, the single target healing can be quite crazy when you've got everything stacked. So overall, it's a really cool ability because it really will get used in lots of different situations. It will be used to save a wipe on a raid by taunting a boss and running away. It will be used in PvP for getting that extra slow. And it will be used in PvE by pretty much every spec. Coming in at number 4 is one that's not going to require a great deal of talking about because it pretty much is self-explanatory, but Spiritlink Totem. Now, Spiritlink Totem is going to be exclusive to Resto Shaman because it's deep in the Resto tree, but it is a really solid cooldown. I'm not saying it's the strongest cooldown, but I would say it's up there. And it's mainly because it's dual purpose. So the totem reduces damage taken by all party and raid members within 13 yards by 10%, so straight away you're bringing like half of a Divine Guardian. And then for every second, the health of all affected players is redistributed such that each player ends up with the same percentage of maximum health. So essentially, it's going to take everybody's health, put it in a big pot, and then it's going to divide it amongst everyone, making sure everybody's evenly leveled off in terms of health. So everybody would be on 80%, or everyone would be on 90%, or whatever. So not only once you're all stacked up are you taking that 10% less damage, it's also making it incredibly unlikely that a single individual would die during it because of the constant equalization of health across the board. Now think about the fact that normally when you stack and you use something like this, everyone's going nuts on AoE healing. It's just really good. Not really much else left to say about that one. Just make sure if you're a raid leader, you're calling for this when you're going to need it. Number 5 could possibly be one of my favourite changes to Enhancement Shaman, and it's a two-parter. In the Enhancement talent tree, you've got Searing Flames and you've got Improved Lava Lash. Now, Searing Flames causes your Searing Bolts from your Searing Totem to stack up a dot on the target. It stacks 5 times and lasts 15 seconds. Now, the interaction it has with Improved Lava Lash is absolutely amazing because it increases the damage of your Lava Lash ability by 20% for each application of Searing Flames on the target. Now, it does consume them in the process, but it also causes your Lava Lash to spread your Flame Shock from the target to up to 4 enemies within 12 yards. So now if you really think about this, not only once it's stacked 5 times is your Lava Lash going to do double damage, but also whenever you're Lava Lashing, it's spreading that Flame Shock. Now with the amount of ad fights there are, on the amount of trash that there is in raids, or even just in heroic dungeons, being able to spread your Flame Shock just as part of your single target rotation is absolutely immense. Because what this then means is you're obviously going to be following up that spread with Fire Nova. So now you're going to be Fire Novaing off all of those different Flame Shocks at the same time, and quite honestly, your single target rotation has barely changed. And this is what I said at the start about them being an absolute cleave machine. On 4 targets, it's going to be very rough to try and even beat an Enhancement Shaman. But honestly, these 2 talents alone just make Enhancement so much more fun to play. And while we're speaking about totems, this takes us nicely on to number 6. Now currently in Wrath of the Lich King, if you're using Totem of Wrath, which if you're raiding, of course you're using Totem of Wrath, you probably feel like you're griefing the raid if you've not got it down. So if you want to use Magma Totem or you want to use your Fire Ellie Totem, it's all downtime of Totem of Wrath. Well, that's been redesigned completely, because instead of Totem of Wrath, you now have Totemic Wrath. And what this does is causes your fire totems to increase the spell power of party and raid members within 100 yards by 10%. Now, there's two reasons why this is really good. Firstly, you're going to want to be using your fire ellie and getting a nice big snapshot, and it will be a big portion of your DPS. And secondly, there's only you and one other spec that can actually bring that 10% spell power buff. And that other spec is a Demonology Warlock. So where at the moment in Wrath of the Lich King you're hoping for your demo to get a really nice big demonic pact, now they only bring 10% as well. Now this is not 10% of their spell power, this is just 10% of the person that's receiving the buff. So you could be a freshly dinged Shaman using Totemic Wrath, and I will get the same amount of spell power from it as if you was in full tier 13. So overall, it's a really positive change that it doesn't matter what fire totem you've got down, as long as you've got a fire totem down, you're always going to be bringing the raid or the party that benefit. Now coming in at number 7 is Healing Rain. I think if you've played a Resto Shaman in Cataclysm onwards before, Healing Rain is one of those abilities that you've just been waiting for. Yes, it can be quite annoying when people decide to move out of your Healing Rain, but just don't heal them anymore. Now, the good thing is, Healing Rain is not Resto only. I'm not saying it's going to be something that you want to use as an Ellie Shaman, but if for some reason your raid was falling behind on AoE healing and you wanted to help out, there's probably no harm in dropping one down. But Healing Rain's a 2-second cast with a 10-second cooldown, and it lasts 10 seconds. And basically, it just does some healing to everyone around you. But there are ways that you can increase this. Like I said at the start, there's multiple ways you can play a Resto Shaman, and Focused Insight is a talent in the 2nd tier, where after casting any shock spell, your next heal's mana cost is reduced by 75% of the cost of the shock spell, and its healing effectiveness is increased by 30%. So by stacking this up, you can get more powerful healing rains down, whilst also reducing the mana cost. And when you pair this playstyle with Telluric Currents, which is right down the bottom, your attunement to natural energies causes your Lightning Bolt spell to restore mana equal to 40% of the damage dealt. So whilst you're not quite an Atonement Priest who, whilst he's dealing damage with Smite, would be healing people, you're dealing damage with Lightning Bolt to get your mana back, to be able to cast shock spells, to basically get your Focused Insight up, to put those big healing rains down on the floor. Obviously, you would be doing more than just that, but having that addition of being able to get mana back whilst Lightning Bolting is absolutely huge, because Healing Rain isn't exactly cheap when, just as a base cost, it's 10,778 mana. There or thereabouts. But honestly, if you're a Resto Shaman, you already know you're absolutely going to love playing around with Healing Rain, so enjoy yourself. Another one for the Ellie Shaman. Am I talking about Ellie too much? I feel like they get the most cool changes. Is Rolling Thunder and Fulmination. Now what Rolling Thunder does is when you deal damage with Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning while your Lightning Shield ability is active, you have a 60% chance to recover 2% of your mana and to generate an additional Lightning Shield charge up to a maximum of 9 charges. Now if you're multi-targeting with Chain Lightning, this has a chance per target hit, so you can get a few charges with a single Chain Lightning. But when you get up to 9, this is where the Fulmination part comes in. So when you have more than 3 Lightning Shield charges active, your Earth Shock spell will consume any surplus charges, instantly dealing their total damage to the enemy target. So now think about point number 2, which was Glyph of Unleashed Lightning. It don't matter how much you're moving, as long as you've got your Lightning Shield up, you can be running around casting Lightning Bolt. Once you reach 9 stacks, bang, you're going to do a big Earth Shock that's going to consume 6 of those charges to take you back down to 3. You can just do all of this on the move. Now, I don't think I need to go into much more detail about this one, because ultimately you're going to get up to 9 stacks and use Earth Shock to consume them. But it's just another really cool addition to the Elemental Shaman playstyle. I suppose I should really mention that at the moment in Wrath of the Lich King, you're probably used to using Water Shield. Well, that's a thing of the past, because of course, using the Rolling Thunder talent, you're actually going to be regenerating mana for having Lightning Shield on. Plus then, all the damage from actually using the Earth Shock to get down to 3 charges again. Coming in at number 9 is Lightning Overload. And you're probably like, we already know what Lightning Overload is, we've been using it for ages. Yeah, well, it's changed. And it's changed in a really good way, where at the moment in Wrath of the Lich King, it's a talent deep in the elemental tree, now it's actually your mastery. And the reason it's really good is because with no mastery, it basically gives you a 16% chance for it to happen, and it does sort of what you would expect with Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, where you'll fire off an extra Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt, but it also does Lava Burst as well now. It will be identical and it will cause 75% of the normal damage. And of course it causes no threat like you would expect. Now each point of mastery increases the chance of it happening by 2%, so So once you start getting really good gear, you really can get a high chance of this happening. So when you compare this to Wrath at the moment, where you've got a 33% chance to cast a second similar spell, it only does half the damage. Now it's going to do 75% of the damage, and it's not going to take you too long to be able to get it up to that sort of 33% mark anyway. And don't forget, if you've got like a really good Mastery proc trinket, for example, obviously you're going to get burst windows when your trinkets are up as well. It's going to increase it even further. Just the fact alone that Lava Burst can now proc Overload as well is absolutely massive. And it's a weird one that I'm going to be ending number 10 on, but it does play into the whole Overload point. And full disclosure, I'm going to do 11 changes. So I'm going to tell you number 10, because number 10 should be the bonus one. But I feel like the bonus one is actually more boring than this. So I want to talk about number 10 first. And number 10 is actually the fact that you get a legendary staff in Firelands. And I know this is not really a class-specific change, but the interaction it has as an elemental shaman in particular is definitely worth talking about. If you don't know about Taragosa's Rest, what it's got is a chance to fire off a duplicate spell. Now this does work for dots as well, where it can duplicate dot ticks, but it can also duplicate Lava Burst. Now the magical thing about an elemental shaman with this is if the stars align, the amount of Lava Burst that you can actually fire off. So you would cast one initial Lava Burst. That Lava Burst gets an Overload proc where you're now got 2 Lava Bursts. The staff procs and copies the initial Lava Burst that you cast, and then Overload could proc off of the copy. I've even heard then that the staff could technically proc the copy of the Overload, but I think let's not be greedy. If you're getting 4 crit Lava Bursts going off all at the same time because you got Flame Shock on the target, it's going to be absolutely insane. Now, whilst it doesn't mean, oh yeah, Elemental Shaman is so far ahead of everybody else they need to get the Legendary Staff, because that's just not the case, it's very RNG dependent, and I have absolutely zero doubt that actually, if luck is on your side during a fight, you probably would get more benefit out of it as an Elemental Shaman. But if we're talking standard, throughput, all classes, you're probably still going to give it to a Fire Mage first. But I would say that because I'm playing a Fire Mage. But I think you've got a really good case as an Elemental Shaman to speak to your guild masters and say, I want the staff first. Now that's the top 10 finished, and I appreciate number 10 wasn't really a Shaman specific change, so you probably sat there a little bit annoyed thinking, well, come on, that was really only 9 and then an item. So I'm going to throw one bonus one in, and the reason I wanted to talk about the Legendary Staff first is because the bonus one is pretty boring. But if you plan on leveling a Shaman actually gets a little bit easier with the addition of a new ability called Primal Strike. Now, Primal Strike is not going to be used at level 85, but it's an instant weapon strike that just causes X amount of additional damage. This will be added in the pre-patch, so if you aim to level a Shaman during the pre-patch, you'll be able to benefit from this, and you literally learn this at level 3. Now, the reason this was added is because if you've leveled a Shaman during Cata or even Wrath, up until about level 10, it's going to be pretty boring and there's not a lot of buttons to press. So this is just to spice it up a little bit and make it less painful to level. I mean, honestly, when we're talking about an ability that technically is a change and it's a new ability that you're going to get, it is really only relevant for leveling. But still, to make sure that there was actually 10 real changes and not me getting you excited about a legendary staff, I thought it was worth mentioning. So again, thanks Jay for helping me out with that. Have you got anything you want to say?
Now, I'm hoping Scott's done a good job showcasing the best class, of which I'm sure he has. But for more content surrounding Shamans, and now Warlocks too, as well as Cataclysm in general, my channel can be found at MidJ on YouTube or in the description below.
Cool. Well, as he said, hopefully I did a good job of getting these across. As I say, most of this is from Jay. If you play a Shaman, go and check his channel out. I'll put a link in the description. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.